Hey, what's up, VC? It's Steve again, Harmless Rebel, and it's time for another country music update. It's been quite a while since I did one. In all honesty, I haven't bought much country western in probably, I think the last album I bought was 3 or 4 months ago, and actually it's this first group of albums I'm going to show I bought a few months ago. A lot of this stuff I've had for 7, 8 months. I just haven't got around to spinning it. As is pretty normal, most of what I've been listening to lately has been hard rock and heavy metal, which you've seen from my other updates. But I figured it was about time. First off, we're listening to Johnny Cash with his Hot and Blue guitar. This was, as you can see, a Record Store Day release. I want to say this is from last year or the year before. I can't remember exactly. This is Johnny Cash's first album on Sun Records. It was released on blue vinyl. I love this album. I mean, this is where Folsom Prison Blues comes from. I Walk the Line, Cry, Cry, Cry. Just every song on this album is just an absolute classic. I know I've shown this before, but I was just in the mood to listen to it. And this was number 205 out of... there we go, 3,000 copies. So this first group, as I mentioned, maybe 3 months ago, I bought a little group of albums. Let's see, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I believe there's actually 8 of them. These are 5. But it was a Hank Williams Jr. lot. Somebody on one of the YouTube pages was selling them for basically $1 a piece. I paid $8. It was like $12 with shipping for 8 albums. I've talked about Hank Williams Jr. before. I like Hank Williams Jr. Not as much as his son or his father. I prefer Hank Williams and Hank Williams III. But Hank Williams Jr. has some definite classics, and some of them are here. You know. First up, we have Montana Cafe, or what's this one called? Yeah, Montana Cafe. And this one was from '86. I think these are all from the mid '80s for the most part, but Wild Streak, Man of Steel. Really? Greatest Hits Volume 2 and Greatest Hits Volume 3. Next up is an artist that doesn't get a lot of love. I don't think I've seen anybody show him in the VC. But he was a favorite of my dad's. My dad loved playing his, and still does, but loved playing his music on guitar. But that's Jerry Reed. This one's Eastbound and Down. Just about everybody knows that song. That's one of the songs from Smokey and the Bandit. And actually, 3 of the songs off of this album are from Smokey and the Bandit. It's got Eastbound and Down, The Bandit, and The Legend. All 3 great songs. Good album, though. Really good album. And then a little bit older, we got Cookin' from Jerry Reed. And this is from 1970. If you're not familiar with Jerry Reed, his guitar work is amazing. I mean, that's what he was famous for. Just a really good guitar player. He was also good at infusing comedy into his songs as well. But really good album right here. Next up is another early one from Tanya Tucker. I'm not a fan of her more rock-sounding music from the late 70s on through the 80s, but I really like her stuff from the early 70s. This one was 73. I love that picture. It's a really cute picture of her. Next up is, this is a Pickwick comp. It's Columbus Stockade Blues and other country favorites. Just kind of an early greatest hits from Willie Nelson. And this is from 76. Also from Willie, this is Willie Nelson's Family Bible. This is actually one I've been looking for a while. I see it quite often, but it's usually in really bad shape. And this one was really nice. That was from 1980. This one I had never seen before, and wasn't sure what to expect, but it's really good. This is from 80. I can't even see it. I got it covered up. But this is Angel Eyes from Willie Nelson, and it's got the guitar work of Jackie King. That's really what makes this kind of a standout album. None of these are new songs. This is all songs you'd be familiar with. Angel Eyes, The Gypsy, I Fall in Love Too Easily, Tumble and Tumbleweed. I mean, all big songs for Willie Nelson. But the guitar work of Jackie King on here is just is killer and kind of takes it over the top. Everybody knows where you go when the sun goes down. Next up, The Last Gunfighter from Johnny Cash. I love this artwork here. Really good album. If you like Johnny Cash, definitely get that one. I don't remember any of these songs being big hits for him, but they're all really good songs. Let's see. Far Banks of Jordan was pretty good, or pretty big. Last Gunfighter Ballad was also kind of a hit for him, so, but really good. You're gonna cry, 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 and then cry alone. I think I've shown this one before. I'm not 100%, but this is Johnny Cash live from Prague, and this was a record store release. I think last record store day, if I remember correctly. But just a really good set. Let's see. Pretty much all of his hits are on here. I'm trying to see what year this was. I guess it doesn't matter, but this one's on red vinyl. Next up, this is just an upgrade copy. Johnny Cash live at San Quentin. This is the Sundays repress. I have an original pressing of this. It just wasn't in that good a condition, so it's. I'm really happy to get this copy here. And Sundays, man, Sundays does such a good job with their represses. Next up, actually, these I recently bought. These were about a month ago. LJ's the reason I kind of pulled the trigger on these two. I knew the name. I was familiar with one of the songs, but I just kind of hesitated the first couple times I saw him. And then LJ showed this first album, and when I was there, they had his first two, so I went ahead and grabbed them. But it's Ricky Van Shelton. This is Wild-Eyed Dreamer, or I'm sorry, Wild-Eyed Dream. And then I also picked up a second album, which is Loving Proof. No one to tell your troubles to. Both of his albums, I feel about the same way about them. Half of them is kind of that earlier sounding country, and then half of the songs are more of a modern sound. I'm not much for the modern rock sound, but the more classic sounding songs that he does are really killer. So I was a fan as a whole of both of the albums. Next up is just kind of if you like country music, you need to have this in your collection. Charlie Daniels Band, Decade of Hits. It's just got all of his top songs. I'm not a huge fan of Charlie Daniels in that I feel that I need to have every one of his albums, but he does have 4 or 5 songs that I really love, and they're all on here. So definitely one of those artists I'd recommend just going for the greatest hits. Next up, one of the greatest country music stars of all time, in my opinion. Oh, let's get that in the... Somehow that's out of the sleeve. And that's Mr. Buck Owens. And this is the best of. This is an early best of, though. Let's see what year. It's at least early 70s. And no date on it, but regardless, this has all of his hits, or a bunch of his hits. But you can't go wrong with Buck Owens.
I'm the one who loves you.
Next up, we've got a little bit of Linda Ronstadt. I've talked about Linda Ronstadt a number of times. I'm a big fan of her early stuff. This is Don't Cry Now. This is one I didn't have in my collection, so I was pretty happy to run across this. And this was mid-'70s, I want to say, when this one came out. Let's see. Oh, early, 73. Next up, we have the Queen of Rockabilly, Mrs. Wanda Jackson. I love Wanda Jackson. I got into her really late. I wasn't familiar with Wanda Jackson. Actually, hearing some of the songs, I did know some of the songs, but I had somebody I didn't really know who she was. And then PBS did a documentary about her, and it was called The Queen of Rockabilly. And I really dug it. And as a fan, at the time I was real heavily into rockabilly and psychobilly. I'm still a fan of those, and I actually just bought a few more psychobilly albums recently. And actually I'm going to do a psychobilly show in a couple weeks here, which I'll talk about in the video after I go to the show. But it really turned me on to Wanda Jackson, and I'm always looking for her stuff now. This is one of her bigger hits. This is There's a Party Going On. I can't find any information about this repress, but it is a repress. But I picked it up for like $5 and it's in mint condition. Highly recommend any Wanda Jackson that you run across. If you just like that first wave rockabilly sound, she was one of the best. Still is. If I remember, I'm pretty sure she's still alive actually. Next up, Merle Haggard, Amber Waves of Grain. This is a cool album. This is from '85. This is during the days of Farm Aid, when they were really pushing for people to send money to save the farms, which unfortunately didn't work. The factory farms have taken over. But this has some really good songs that talk about the danger, or that talk about the importance of farms. Very political album, at least the first few songs. The first few songs are related to that farm movement, and then the rest of it is some of his hits, Okie from Muskogee, Gone with the Wind, American Waltz. Really good album though. And honestly, you can't really go wrong with Merle Haggard. Next up, this is one I took a chance on. I wasn't familiar with it. I didn't know most of the songs, but I really ended up enjoying it. This is I'm 10,000 Years Old, Elvis Country. And it's Elvis doing some of his early country songs. Really good album though. A really nice picture there of Elvis's parents and him. He was 2 years old, as you can see from the picture there. But just a cool album. Just Elvis doing country music. And then last but not least, we're going to go to some modern stuff. I was pretty blown away because these are both very hard to find albums, and I found them both sealed, and for relatively cheap. I paid under $20 for each of these, and both of these go well into the $30s and $40 range. So first up is Hillbilly Joker from Hank 3. This is more Hank Williams III doing his more of a rockabilly sound. It's not really rockabilly, it's not really psychobilly, it kind of fits in the middle there. It's definitely his own take, but he does a great job with it. And the artwork is just killer on this album. And then this one was I guess a smoke vinyl they call it. And it also came with a copy of the CD. This other one is Damn Right Rebel Proud. This is, if you're interested in hearing really good, just Hank III doing country music, this is the one. And this would be the one that I would recommend people go to first. If you're not familiar with Hank 3, I would start off with this album because this really is him at his best. But killer album. Quite a few hits on this album too. This one is on black vinyl. That's it, VC. It actually went a little bit longer. No, it's not too bad. I hope you dug it. Leave me some comments. Tell me what you think. If you got some recommendations for me, throw them down there. Other than that, take care and have a good one, VC.